Our next speaker, we're going to get him geared right up. Jonathan Lundgren, we are so grateful that you're able to be here with us. Your message ties in so well with what we've been talking about here. Where are you calling in from today, Jonathan?
I'm calling in from South Dakota.
Very good. And is that home for you?
That is home base. We live on Blue Dasher Farm, which is an operating regenerative farm out here up on the frigid north, and raise sheep, lamb, cut flowers, and kind of have a diversified farm operation.
Okay. Well, very good. Jonathan's a great speaker to listen to. I've heard you live, I've heard you on webinars before, and really look forward to hear and wish like with everybody, half hour goes by super quick. Um, but he'll give us how to be able to find more about him and
All right. So, yep. I'm John. I run a nonprofit called Ecdysis Foundation. We're gathering data across North America on regenerative agriculture. We were down in Florida sampling citrus. The identity of that state has been oranges for as long as I can remember. As a kid, I remember watching Kenny Rogers drink Florida orange juice. He seemed to really like it. But what a lot of people don't know is that over the last 20 years, Florida has reduced its production of oranges by 96%. It's completely collapsed. And they're trying to blame a disease for that, but I think they're going to have to look a little closer in the mirror or a little harder in the mirror to really get at what the problem is in Florida citrus. I was talking with one of the, oh, to keep the industry alive, that's what it looks like, yeah. To keep the industry alive, there's a disease that came in, HLB. And so they're actually injecting every tree now with antibiotics and seeing how that works. Um, Keeping bare soil underneath the soil, or keeping bare soil underneath the tree canopy, as you see in the picture there. I was talking with one of the conventional producers out there, and he was saying that his tree's roots were kind of anemic; they just weren't doing anything. And I said, well, we've been meeting some of the farmers, and they're bringing what seemed to be dead orchards back to life using soil health. And one of the tricks that they're doing in order to do that is growing vegetation from trunk to trunk. And he's to like, John, if that's true, then that flies in the face of everything that the universities, everything that the citrus industry is telling us to do out there. And I asked him, how's it working? And and he thought about it for a minute, and he's like, yeah, you're right. Um, they're not looking out for us little guys. And I think that question we really need to ask ourselves pretty frequently. Do some self-assessments and just ask ourselves, how's it working? A central problem that we're facing in agriculture is on this slide. It is not necessarily soybeans. It is how we produce our soybeans. Agriculture has become too simplified. At its heart, this is the issue that we are facing right now. Because in a healthy ecosystem, there is life, there is biodiversity in all of its different facets. And that biodiversity is great, not just because we love species, but because these species do things. They run the productivity of that farm. And when you remove that diversity, you also you have to replace what that life used to do on your farm with a jug. And it doesn't matter if that jug says regenerative or organic or conventional. That's what jugs do. They replace what life does for you for free. There's consequences to this, okay? Because, and oftentimes there are consequences that we are not necessarily expecting to see. How many of you have heard of neonicotinoid seed treatments? Um, these insecticides, when you plant field crop seeds, you know, they're not grown pink and green and blue, right? That they're treated. They're treated with an insecticide, usually a fungicide is on there as well. And that's meant to protect the developing seedling from early season herbivory. But the problem is that the insecticides that are on those seeds are really effective at killing insects and they don't stay put. So one corn seed in the United States has enough insecticide to kill about 164,000 bees. So where are these things going? If only like 3% of the insecticide is being taken up by the developing plant, where's the rest of it going? Well, it's getting into the water. It's getting into plants, things that were never treated to begin with. So we had a friend of ours, she started seeing some stuff over in Montana, and she said that about 70% of the hunter-killed deer had genital deformities, the males. They had jaw deformities like what you see in that picture. And so Elise, our graduate student, conducted an experiment, and this experiment will never be repeated again. It was extremely difficult to do. What she did is she ran a 2-year captive deer study where we fed them imidacloprid, a neonicotinoid insecticide, and then we monitored their health and wellness of the females as well as their progeny. The spleen was the magic tissue. When we looked at the amounts of neonicotinoid within the spleen of these deer, it seemed to correlate quite well with other parameters in their life histories. So, for example, dead fawns, alive fawns, the dead ones tended to have quite a bit more neonicotinoid in their spleens. Similarly, when we looked at the amount that was in these spleens associated with reduced fawn body weight, they were smaller. Not surprisingly, their organs were smaller. They had disrupted thyroid hormone levels. Think about that. Anybody in your life have hyperthyroidism right now? We've got them on staff. This is pervasive right now. Jawbone lengths, that sounds familiar. Activity levels in adult deer. Yeah. So what's a slow deer in the wild, right? It's a dead deer. I think we need to pay really close attention to this. If I was to take away the word deer off of this slide and replace it with bees, I mean, you'd see the same thing. If I was to replace it with us, you'd be seeing the same thing. Anybody in your life having fertility problems, diseases, autoimmune diseases, hormone disruptions? Well, yeah, we should be paying attention to this. That's what we were able to force feed into our deer under captive conditions. This was the amount that we were able to generate. North Dakota Game Fish and Parks decided to mail us a whole bunch of spleens from hunter-killed animals up there, and we tested those. They have about 3 times the amount that we were able to experimentally generate in the lab. This is the test of our generation, everybody. We are selecting for species, including ourselves, that can survive within this matrix. Oh, and in the US, about 13% of the terrestrial land surface is planted with neonicotinoids. Yeah. How's it working? How's it working? You feel better than you were? Because I could drive from my house. I had to ask myself this question, right? I mean, as a scientist, I worked for the USDA for many years, and things were going great. Very few people had better stats than I had, but I could drive from my house in South Dakota over to my parents' place in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and things weren't getting better. I mean, sure, I was doing my job and I had great statistics, but it wasn't helping anybody, right? I mean, climates were continuing to change. The rural communities were disappearing. Pollution is rampant. Things aren't getting better. And so I had to ask myself this question. How's it working? It wasn't working very well, so I quit. I also started meeting the people like this that were showing me that there was a different way, that 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 there was a better way. They didn't probably call themselves the regenerative farmers at the time, but they were practicing it. So, what is this regenerative agriculture thing? So this is, you've heard this, okay, probably a whole bunch of times today. This is the list of things that, you know, regenerative speakers haul out. And I have a feeling there's going to be a real push that, you know, you check these boxes and you're regenerative, right? I think we have to start a little bit deeper than that. I think that unless you are connecting on your farm, nature, family, community, then checking those boxes really isn't enough. And we'll talk a little bit more about that definition and how my perception of the definition of regenerative agriculture has changed. You know, we need science right now within this space, but it's got to be done differently. Yeah, we need to connect our scientists to the problem a little bit deeper. We believe at Ecdysis Foundation, this was the reason I quit USDA and started Ecdysis, was to try to address this kind of gaping chasm in what the farmers were doing with what the scientific community seems to think can happen. Science needs to be systems level. It needs to be farmer driven. Scientists were never meant to be the experts on farming. Farmers are the experts on farming. And so if the farmers need to be developing these systems, and scientists can come in, we can help to transfer and scale what it is that the farmers are showing us. But we were never meant to be developing these systems. We have to cross ecoregions and we have to reflect real food systems. All of this fed into the 1,000 Farms Initiative. And it may not be the largest, but it sure is big. Essentially, what we tried to do in North America is to validate, does regenerative work, no matter what you grow and where you grow it? And farmers are developing successful systems. How are they getting there? Can we learn from these farmers and transfer it and scale it? This is where we have been so far. Each dot is a farm. And the little blue triangle, that's home base. That's Ecdysis headquarters. We deploy scientific teams to each of these farms across North America. And you, by the blank areas that you see on that map, you can tell where we're going to be in 2025, can't you? All told, we've visited 1,300 farms across the country. We've examined in replicate more than 35 different food systems, more than 5 different livestock systems. Okay. And each of those dots represents a farm, and they're not necessarily just regenerative. They kind of span a continuum from very conventional to very regenerative. And we have a scoring system that's free that you can apply to your own farm. In about 2 minutes, I can place your farm along this continuum, and I can make pretty accurate predictions as far as what we might be expecting in terms of soil quality, carbon levels, biodiversity, profitability. how happy you are, what level of Parkinson's you might have in your family. Pretty accurate. On each of those dots, each of those farms, we are looking at the nutrition of the food itself. This is one of the most comprehensive examination of nutrition in the human food system that has ever been done. We are quantifying thousands of phytochemicals available in each of these yield products. We're looking at soil chemistry, physical properties. We're looking at water use. How does the soil seems to be, how does the soil seem to be affecting water quality or water retention and the dynamics of water cycle? I was in northern New York working with some Amish farmers up there. And I was explaining to him all of the things that we were measuring on his farm. And I said, we're going to look at the soil quality. And he's like, yeah. We'll tell you how much carbon you have. He's like, okay, that's fine. And then water. Yeah. And then I explained to him that we were going to tell him all of the species of plants that we were finding on his farm. And we were going to name all of the microbial species living in his soil, the invertebrates, the birds. And with everything that I listed, his eyes got a little bit brighter. And I asked him later why. And he explained that, according to his faith, humans are put on earth to be stewards of life. And of all the people that were measuring his farm, nobody was talking about the biodiversity and the life on his farm. So that was pretty special for him. We're also looking at the economics and the management of each of these farming operations. All right, you guys, this is it. These are some of the results. This is just row crops. This has not been published yet. It is submitted to the top tier journal in science. We'll see whether they allow this in or not. Yeah, we're just looking at row crops in North America, and these were sampled in 2022 and 2023. I don't know about you, but when I start hearing about carbon, my eyes kind of glaze over. So I'm going to make a couple of points, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of put into context a little bit of what this is. Okay, the US alone produces a lot of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, 6 gigatons. Ag is a big contributor of this. When we till the soil, when we clear the land of plants and then plant only a monoculture of a crop, that increases the albedo and becomes very problematic. When you disrupt the microbial communities of the soil, that also is a contributor. Regenerative farms versus conventional farms. So what you see in those two bars, you see the amount of carbon being stored down to 60 centimeters in each of those different soil columns. All right. What this graph says is that regenerative farms store significantly more carbon, equivalent to twice the US emissions that we are able to store within these. That is by far and away the best option for getting carbon down into the ground again that currently exists. When we hear about all of the carbon capture approaches, I mean, they're happy with 1 gigaton. We're talking about twice the annual emissions. Yes, we're losing species at a rapid rate. This is one of the worst mass extinction events that the planet has ever experienced. Birds, bats, bees, butterflies. Science is real clear that when the soil is gone, I mean, yeah, we always hear that statistic that we're losing soil. Well, in the next 40 years, if we don't change something, we're going to lose most of life on Earth as well. And we're watching that happen. Can regenerative agriculture help in this? And this is just row crops again, folks. Every single organismal group that we examined responded strongly and positively to regenerative practices. Okay. Plants. There were so many more plants that we ended up having to cut the bar in half, right? In order to fit it on the page. What was so important? So yes, okay, fungi, bacteria, plants, birds, bugs, you name it. They're all responding positively. Okay. Not only that, but the amount of life on that farm was scaling directly with how much carbon was being stored in the soil. When farmers talk to me about carbon, I say, stop. Stop with your discussions of carbon. Carbon is an outcome. Grow life on your farm. The carbon will behave itself. Grow life on your farm. The water will behave itself. In fact, we can even create biological target communities that farms in North America, if they were to have, it would offset the storage potential would offset a year of annual emissions. And this is not that big of a deal, okay? This is like one non-crop species out there, for crying out loud. Imagine if we were to put a diverse cover mix, which makes a lot more sense agronomically. Number one, we can feed the world using regenerative agriculture. Regenerative corn, wheat, soybeans equaled the national averages. All right. So that's a good thing, right? Assuming that you went over to your grain bin and took a handful of yellow number 5 corn and took a bite, which nobody does. We're currently devoting 190 million acres in our country to food we do not eat. We feed to our cars. If you really want to get serious about the food crisis and feeding the humanity, grow food. Conventional producers actually produce more yield, but they don't have to. Some of the top yielding crops in each of these systems happen to be regenerative. And the conventional producers that are growing these yields, they're costing, they're spending a lot of money in order to get there. But they're not making it back. So regenerative farmers in these row cropping systems make just as much money as their conventional counterparts. So this perception that you're going to lose money by going regenerative, it is not borne out by the data. I was in North Carolina. It was hot, right? It was hot. I was on probes that day, so I was digging soil probes down to 60 centimeters, and there was on this organic blueberry farm. It was closed. There was nobody there. And then this one guy kind of drives up. The old farmer sitting in a rocking chair watching the show of our team as they measure his blueberries. And one thing, by the time we were done sampling, that whole orchard was full and of people. And I was done. I went over. He called me over to sit with him on the porch. And he's like, John, I got something to tell you. I leaned a little closer. He's like, John, it's not about the money. Take care of your family, take care of your community, and the money will come. And I think that that's true. Regenerative farmers are motivated by different things. Why is it if some of these regenerative farmers are able to maximize yield out of both categories of farms, why aren't all of them? Well, they're driven by different motivators. Conventional farmers disproportionately were motivated by finances, legacy of past generations, expanding the size of their operations, yield. You know, these are traditional economic metrics. Regenerative farmers were disproportionately motivated by mental and physical wellness of their families. What's interesting about this slide is that not all of these motivators are real. These are perceptions, right? Because in both cases, both the conventional and the regenerative farmers, they both say that soil health is one of their strongest motivators. But that is not borne out by the data, right? I mean, those conventional farmers are, I mean, they're mining their soil for everything it's worth. Likewise, finances were not improved on the conventional farms. And so this idea that the reason that they're doing what they're doing is for profit, yeah, it's not necessarily borne out. Okay, this one will maybe get your attention. Based on some of the surveys, we asked the croppers now, croppers, are you afflicted with any of these issues? Okay, so a lot of these are autoimmune issues and mental wellness situations. So you see the statistics there. This is the percentage positive. And then I looked at the national averages in the US just for society at large. And these are the numbers. And in the red, you see the increase that our farmers are experiencing in each of these issues. About 200% times, or twice the, or yeah, 212% more depression, 100% more asthma, so on and so forth. And then I asked him about Parkinson's, and I asked him about cancer. We're killing our farmers. For corporate greed, we are killing our farmers. And I used to think that growing corn, beans, wheat a little better was good enough. And I can't keep apologizing for this system anymore, folks. This isn't okay. So that farmers go out and they borrow $850,000 a year to make $50,000 a year. Do we ask ourselves where's the other $800,000 going to? How's it working? I think we were in Maine. Um, I'm a data guy. Okay, I try to work by the numbers. And I thought that the data was going to be the most important outcome of this experiment. And I think it is an important outcome. But one of the really important things that I didn't see coming was really well illustrated up in Maine. These wild blueberry farmers, Del and Marie, they've been working their whole lives. They're in their 80s now. And they've been risking everything because they believed in something. They fought their entire lives against this swell of industrialization that threatened to take over their communities. And they're at the end of their lives, and they just wanted to know that somebody cared, that it was for something, that it wasn't just going to die with them. And in drives this caravan of old crappy minivans and spills out these young enthusiastic scientists that think that this is the coolest farm they've ever seen. And I didn't understand the power of just being there and hearing them. When we leave a farm, whether it's conventional or regenerative, we don't know what we're going to find. That's why we're doing the science. But one thing that farmer knows is that as we drive off, we care about them. We care about their family. We care about their farm. And that is much different than the science that's currently informing global food policies and telling us what our food system can or can't do.
Yeah,
This is now,
Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan,
yeah,
we're gonna have to wrap up
yeah,
here.
I'll leave it off with this. I'll leave it
I
off with this.
let's bring Graham up actually, and do you know Graham Reese from Australia?
I do.
Yeah, Graham, can we make this transition a little more subtle because I wish we had another hour. You made me pound my fist on my desk, Jonathan. This is not okay.
Not anymore.
No, no. This is not about just about profitability, is it?
No, it's not. And I think that we need to understand that there's an industry that's evolved to take advantage of farmers, and it's having lasting effects on our rural communities at this point.
Absolutely. Graham, are you there? Can you unmute and we'll pin
I'm
you?
I'm here. I'm unmuted, and boy, I tell you what. In 2019, we visited Jonathan with 20 other Aussie farmers, and we came away from there saying this little plot, that the Blue Dasher farm, could well be doing the best science on the planet. And I think the work Jonathan does is extraordinary, and the just the work you're doing, Jonathan. Thank you on behalf of everybody.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Well said. Jonathan, what is the next step if people want to learn more? Where would you
Um,
send them?
Go to the website, ecdysis.bio. I'll put it in the chat right now. If you'd like to see more, you can look us up on YouTube. There should be a TED Talk that's coming out here within the next couple of months that'll hopefully, um, highlight some of the research and why we're doing what we do.
Thank
Uh,
you. Yeah,
yeah,
please check that out, you guys. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Jonathan, we would love to have you back and be able to give more time. These are
good luck.
producers. In some way, you may feel like you're preaching to the choir, but what my hope is that there's a ripple effect from what we've heard here today, what we've heard from Don Huber, that we can marry the science with the practice and the fun stuff that we do and have a greater conviction that something needs to change. You've definitely incited that in me. So we appreciate the work that you're doing, Jonathan.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Good luck.
Okay, thank you so much.